cruising in my lane fast, call it high speed. I've been working hard, yeah, I've been working nightly. If
Welcome
you think you'll win, nah, fucking
to the
likely.
newest
I be taking
addition
shots,
to the
yeah,
Real
cold
Take
blooded,
universe.
icy.
Welcome to the show where we talk about all things wrestling, the most engaging wrestling show in the entire interweb. Yes, I said interweb. Welcome to Wrestling with Omer, our first ever show, and this is a project that I'm really excited to kick off. I'm really happy about where we're at here on Real Take Wrestling, and I thought I'd add to the fun. We got OT graphs, we got all the live streams, we got the breaking news, and now we have a live show. Not sure exactly when we're going to be going live every week, but I'm going to try to go live at least once a week and do this. Also, we are going to be on podcast platforms everywhere. But welcome to this week. We're going to be talking about the injury bug that has plagued all of professional wrestling, seemingly. Matt Cardona, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole, and many more bit with the injury bug throughout the world of pro wrestling. We'll talk about what these injuries mean, why they're happening, and what the impact is going to be throughout all of the world of professional wrestling. That's AEW, WWE, and many, many more. Guys, before we get to any of that, if you're watching live, be sure to leave a chat. Be sure to leave your questions. This is an interactive show. Your questions drive our discussion and what we're going to be doing today. So, MGT, I see you're already in the chat. How's it going? Let's go. And let's start off, guys, by talking about the one thing in pro wrestling that is no secret. We have had a bunch of injuries, just an insane amount of injuries. Like I mentioned before, this is across all the different promotions. I discussed Matt Cardona, who not a lot of people are talking about. He's also injured, and he was the digital champion over at Impact Wrestling. He's holding multiple titles. He's the king of the indies, as many like to say. He's injured. The AEW World Champion, CM Punk, is injured. They're going to have an interim championship tournament to decide who's going to hold that belt. Cody Rhodes, who many thought was on his way to a WWE World Heavyweight Championship reign, is now out with a torn pec, as we saw last night, and you can see in this picture right here, a very gruesome injury. I mean, it's hard to really fathom this many high-profile injuries. Like, one thing we need to understand is injuries happen in professional wrestling, and they have been happening over the past insert number here, many years. The importance and the reason there's so much significance, I think, put on the latest batch of injuries is because of the people. Obviously, the people who are being put on the shelf. I mentioned the AEW World Champion. I mentioned people who were in line for that tournament or in line for potentially holding that title in place of CM Punk. I mentioned Bryan Danielson, a guy who many people thought deserved another shot at the AEW World title, even though he's in another feud. But that's another guy who's a championship caliber guy who is going to be out for at least a few weeks, we're hearing, because of an injury. And many people are asking why this is happening. And the truth of the matter is, it's a combination of just luck and bad luck at being that, and also I think the high level of work rate that we are seeing from a lot of the people that are injured. Look, think about some of these names. Think about some of these names who are injured. A guy like CM Punk, who just days after wrestling his ass off at AEW Double or Nothing, goes into a 6-man tag team match. And this is, by the way, after weeks and weeks of wrestling and going very, very hard in the ring. I know he's not doing it every day. I know it's not comparable to some of the in-ring action that WWE guys have to do. But it's still a lot for someone who's in this position, who is at the age that Punk is at and at the level of Punk is at. So you have that. You have a guy like Bryan Danielson, who all he does is go out and have great matches. All he does is go out there and wrestle. He barely ever talks. Another guy like Cody Rhodes. He's on a very, very tough schedule over there in WWE. He wrestles a lot, and he wants to wrestle a lot. And injuries are part of the game. So I think it's a combination of that. The high work rate we're seeing, dumb luck. It's just luck sometimes, people. It's just luck. MGT in the chat says, yeah, I knew about Matt Cardona's injury. He says that the injury bug has taken over professional wrestling. Will Washington, by the way, of the Grab City podcast, big shout out to the Grab City boys over at Fightful, mentioned this, I believe, last night before when Cody's injury was making the rounds, or in the news, I should say, of Cody Rhodes' injury was making the rounds. Will Washington mentioned that in 2007, there were a plethora of injuries that took place in WWE that had a lot of main guys out. And WWE actually had to vacate the title or change the title multiple times that year due to injury. And that's the WWE Championship and the World's Heavyweight Championship. So it's not an uncommon thing. And I actually have the tweet from Will right here. Let me see if I can pull it up for you fine people on our YouTube page so you guys can also see and bask in the glory that is this very informative tweet. But basically, in 2007, as Will Washington says right here, we saw a whole host of injuries that kept a lot of people out. Now, many of you might be asking, there it is right there. There we go. 2007, we lost a lot of guys, back-to-back. Started with Triple H with his quad in January. Taker tore his bicep in May. HBK blew out his knee in May. Edge tore his pec in July. Lashley tore his rotator cuff in July. John Cena tore his pec in October. It was rough. And Rey Mysterio was already injured. And you had the Benoit tragedy, which saw the many, many, many more guys and people all put on the shelf due to that. So injuries happen. Injuries are a part of the game, and it's not a new occurrence. It is startling the rate that it's happening. I understand why people are upset. You have a lot of the main stars, a lot of the best parts of the show now off TV. Bryan Danielson, I mentioned, he's off TV. Cody Rhodes, this came out via Cultaholic. Cody Rhodes is actually having surgery, I believe, on Thursday, if I'm correct. Actually, this was according to Fightful. I read it on Cultaholic, but Cultaholic, by the way, is a great website. But Cody Rhodes is having surgery on Thursday. On top of that, you have Adam Cole's injury, who Adam Cole, by the way, was supposed to be in a big 10-man tag team match. Jeff Hardy, another name who was injured. Jeff Hardy, another name who was injured, who people were suspecting was wrestling at Double or Nothing with an injury. So again, the names don't stop. The names don't stop. And the update from Dave Meltzer, according to Adam Cole's injury now, is that Adam Cole probably won't be in action until until Forbidden Door. So Forbidden Door is June 26th. So Adam Cole is going to be on the shelf and not wrestling on Dynamite for a few weeks. Again, it doesn't end. We go on to Cody, and I know MGT, you just mentioned Cody Rhodes. Cody says Cody Rhodes became a legend for what a tough SOB he was last night. And look, there's a good part to Cody Rhodes wrestling last night and a bad part to it. The good part is that Cody Rhodes went out there and he outdid anyone's expectations of how someone would wrestle with a torn pec going into the match, especially to the degree that we saw it was injured. That being said, I don't think Cody should have wrestled. I think that while the mentality, I totally 100% understand the mentality of wanting to go out there, tough it out, and give the crowd what they want. I 100% sympathize and to an extent and really understand what Cody is doing. And I honestly cannot say that if I was in Cody Rhodes' position, I would do something different. Because some people have that mentality, and I like to think I'm one of those people. Like, even when the going's tough, you just got to tough it out. And it might be bad. We might need to change the way we view that. We might need to amend the way that we act in those situations, especially when our health and our bodies are on the line in the manner that they are. But the truth is, I think there are a lot of people who would be in Cody's situation, probably would have done a similar thing. That is not to say that it was the right thing to do. I think that the right thing to do, and honestly the right thing probably for the roster to do, would have been to post a picture of what the pec looked like before the match and say, I can't in good conscience wrestle. I think if Cody Rhodes has posted a picture online, there still would have been the idiots, the marks, as they say, who would have said that Cody Rhodes is weak who would have said that Cody Rhodes should go out there and tough it out. Doesn't matter. Their opinion doesn't mean jack when compared to Cody's health. I think if Cody had said that, I am not in a position to wrestle, here's the injury, there would have been, the vast majority of wrestling fans would have said, okay, yeah, fair enough, don't wrestle. When it comes to, and I think it sets a bad precedent. I hope that other WWE superstars and wrestlers don't feel like they need to put their bodies on the line to this extent that Cody was at, because it was a completely torn pec. As MGT in the chat just said, it was a completely torn pec. I mean, granted, there's no further damage you can do to it. Here's the thing. You can say there's no further damage you can do to it, but when your pec is weakened, when you have a muscle that's already weakened, the muscles around it can also be affected. Cody Rhodes, he's not putting as much pressure on his right pec, right? He's putting a lot of pressure on that left arm. He's putting a lot more pressure on taking bumps on that left side of his body. There are other things that can happen. You can aggravate the injury even more, too. It is possible to aggravate a completely torn pec and make it worse and make the healing time longer than what it would have been. That's the other thing we need to take into account. And not that I disagree with you, MGT. Like, yeah, granted, torn pec completely to the bone. What more can you really do, like, in retrospect or in comparison, right? But I do think that when we're discussing the health of wrestlers moving forward, I think setting the precedent, and especially in WWE, setting the precedent that wrestlers don't necessarily need to tough it out when they're having these huge debilitating injuries is a good thing. That's for WWE, AEW, NWA, New Japan, wherever. Apparently, this is according to reports from WrestleVotes. This is actually according to WrestleVotes. Said, quote, I've had multiple sources reach out to me this morning with exemplary words for Cody's performance last night. Credit to Seth Rollins as well. Those in Gorilla were said to have loved the match. A modern day all-time Hell in a Cell classic. The WWE will treat as much going forward. So WWE, very impressed with Cody's performance. Everyone should be. That was an impeccable performance. What Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins did last night was a spectacular match. Honestly, is it one of the best Hell in a Cell matches I've seen? No, not really. But as a match, I think it was actually better than the WrestleMania match. I thought the story that they told was great. The in-ring action, and it was made even more compelling with Cody Rhodes having that torn pec. So, again, it's a double-sided coin. Things aren't just black and white when we're talking about pro wrestling or anything, honestly. I don't like to look at things as just bad or good. You have to be able to separate the two, find that gray area, not the common area, not the middle ground. You have to find the gray area, which is most likely the truth. And in this case, I think we can say that Cody's grit and determination to go out there was admirable, inspiring even, and even added to the match. However, I really hope that other wrestlers don't see this and have this put pressure on them to be in the same position, because you don't want to see guys and girls and wrestlers hurt each other. You don't want to see wrestlers hurt each other or hurt themselves in these situations. It's just not a place we want to be in pro wrestling. We should want wrestlers, when they're hurt and injured and unable to perform and probably shouldn't be performing, we should want them to not perform and get back as healthy as they can as soon as they can. My thing is this. I'd much rather have had Cody, again, it's a completely torn pec. We don't need to talk about it much more. I am talking about it at length a little bit because it was part of a pay-per-view last night that I did watch, but the lead-up to which I did not watch, which is exactly why we didn't do the preview show, because I just did not catch up on Monday Night Raw. Sorry about that. Or Friday Night SmackDown, for that matter. But, yeah, Cody Rhodes. Got to give him props, though. Got to give him props. MGT says, massive props to Seth Rollins as well for doing that kind of match with an injured Cody. Absolutely. Seth Rollins deserves a lot of credit. I thought that they got away with doing just enough as far as hurting Cody's pec and making that a part of the story. without going over the line and honestly, putting it in too many positions where it could be re-aggravated. Excuse me. As we move on, guys, reminder here to hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Head on over to Twitter at Real Take Sports to stay updated on all the wonderful, wacky stuff that we are doing. And be sure to check out OT Graps on Tuesdays. We got daily videos on news, live streams, and much more here on youtube.com/Real Take Wrestling. So I want to quickly shift gears to AEW, All Elite Wrestling, and talk about CM Punk. So, big injury happened to CM Punk. We all know this. CM Punk, AEW World Champion, coming off of one of the most spectacular nights of his career. Whoopsies. One of the most spectacular nights of his career, where he finally, by God, finally became the All Elite Wrestling World Champion after almost a year of putting that as his goal and chasing it. He did it. But now CM Punk seems to have broken his foot. CM Punk had a major announcement on Friday's episode of Rampage as the AEW World Champion revealed that he has sustained a broken foot that would require surgery. Punk admitted that he offered to relinquish the title, but Tony Khan did not strip him of the gold. Instead, CM Punk will remain the All Elite Wrestling World Champion, and there will be an eliminator series, eliminator kind of tournament-ish thing that will determine who the AEW World Champion will be. Now, I understand that there was a lot of confusion as to the AEW World Championship tournament, the eliminator that was going to take place, and we'll talk about that and clear that up in a little bit. Tired today. But first I wanted to start by talking about the Punk injury. And I think the way that AEW is going about this. So, CM Punk, he wrestles this match at Double or Nothing with Adam Page. Goes out there, has a spectacular match. Absolutely spectacular match. Wins it. And in the end, we noticed that he had missed the buckshot. We noticed that he was hobbling a little bit, but you took that as selling. And I honestly don't think, like, if the rumors are to be believed, I don't think that CM Punk was injured I don't think he was injured, I should say, on the night of the pay-per-view. I think the injury came, as many of us saw, after he had done that dive. And maybe the injury was aggravated to the extent that it became more serious when he did that. But on Dynamite, when he came out for that 6-man tag team match, Punk did a dive into the crowd, and you could visibly see him limping. And it was a lot more than he had been doing before. And it didn't seem like a work, and it very much so affected his match against the Ass Boys. So, given that, now he's injured. He did the big promo. A lot of people were visibly upset with the way that things turned out, and it's unfortunate. We were ready for the Summer of Punk. We were ready to see CM Punk finally, by God, finally become the AEW champion that many of us wanted him to be. And unfortunately, that has been put on hold for now. So what does that mean for the AEW World title? What does that mean for the title picture? What does that mean for the future of All Elite Wrestling is what many wrestling fans were wondering. And the answer that we got, again, Punk tried to relinquish the title. Tony Khan wouldn't let him. And probably a good thing, because we were about to get something very interesting and compelling. Here we go. This is a very helpful graphic by Jelly Janela. Big shout out to @Jelly Janela on Twitter. Give him a follow, folks. This is @Jelly Janela, who really consolidated and very clearly laid out, way more than AEW clearly laid this out, because AEW was very unclear with the way that this tournament was going to happen. But very clearly laid out here the future of the AEW World title. There's going to be an interim champion that is going to be crowned at Forbidden Door. We know that. eventually that interim champion will face CM Punk whenever he returns from injury. And it's going to be as follows. Here's a tournament. First, there's really only 2 rounds. First round, you have 2 matches. The winner of a battle royal this Wednesday night on Dynamite versus Jon Moxley. Now, the battle royal is going to kick off Dynamite. Jon Moxley versus the winner of this battle royal is going to main event that same episode of Dynamite, June 8th. We're all here. We're all together. You're all with me. At New Japan Dominion on June 12th, Hiroshi Tanahashi is going to wrestle Goto in a basically number 1 contender match. And the winner of that match is going to wrestle the winner of the Moxley TBD match at Forbidden Door. All makes sense. Very clear. Much more clear than AEW laid it out in their press release and in the graphic that they had on AEW Rampage the night that Punk essentially said that he was injured. Okay. We're all there. You're all with me. Glad to hear it. Now, I don't think it's a secret that the AEW World title is likely going to stay with an AEW wrestler. I don't think that Tanahashi or Goto are going to win it. First of all, let me say this. No disrespect, but Hiroshi Tanahashi is going to win at Dominion. And no disrespect to the winner of the Battle Royal either. Jon Moxley is going to win on Dynamite. Because the one match, if you want to talk about a dream match that has been built up for the last few years, that has been built up by Jon Moxley and his own actions and his own words, ever since he left WWE, the one guy that he has been calling out has been Hiroshi Tanahashi. And there is no better way to main event Forbidden Door. There is no better way to put a marking, put a bookend, there we go, at the end of that pay-per-view, than having one of the biggest dream matches in pro wrestling, Tanahashi, Moxley, main event that show to crown the interim AEW World's Heavyweight Champion. And by the way, it's going to be Mox. I really do think it's going to be Mox. But we'll see. Surf Wrestling is in the chat. Welcome, Surf Wrestling. Says, I think we're getting Konosuke on AEW Dynamite title. Yeah, maybe. We got Kushida versus Wheeler Yuta for the ROH Pure Television belt would be great. Oh my God, Kushida versus Wheeler Yuta. That's something that I didn't even think about, but now that I really want it. Like, I mean, Wheeler Yuta is... can we talk about Wheeler Yuta for a second? Wheeler Yuta has really put himself up there with some of the best young technical professional wrestlers there are. Like, in the ring, one of the most fun guys to watch, and I don't think that there's any doubt that, you know, the pairing with Jon Moxley, Bryan Danielson is only going to elevate him even more so than he already is. MGT in the chat earlier asked, Omer, who do you think should win the AEW Interim Championship? I think it should be Moxley. Because the whole point of this summer was after the NBA Finals, right? The whole point of the Punk title reign in general was after the NBA Finals to go all in on getting as many viewers as you possibly can, putting the title on your biggest star. Outside of CM Punk, the biggest star in AEW is Jon Moxley. Putting him as the focal point of the show, framing the show around him throughout the summer for how many ever months that CM Punk is going to be out, that should be the main goal. While I would love, like don't get me wrong, in the perfect world, I actually want one of these heels to win the interim title. You know who I would love to see as an interim champion? I would love to see a guy like Lance Archer. A guy who has been busting his butt since day one in AEW. A guy who has proven that he can wrestle. He can go with anybody who's a threat, who's a big guy, a monster, and can look imposing holding that world title, and who honestly deserves it. I remember Lance Archer before he was in AEW and before he had that stint in Japan where he really changed himself and made himself into a much bigger star. I remember Lance Archer when he was back in the days of Impact Wrestling, TNA, when he was Lance Hoyt, the Guitar Hero wielding Lance Hoyt with that terrible tattoo. I mean, there are a few guys that have changed themselves so drastically. Like Scott Steiner's another one. Not that he should win the title, but in that the makeover that they did for themselves, that he did for himself, was absolutely insane. Like, you could not recognize him from point A to point B. But Lance Archer would have been a guy. But right now, the landscape of All Elite Wrestling, I think, needs a big guy on top. You want to take advantage of the summer, not having the competition with the NBA, and you want to be able to go out there, put on some fantastic shows on Wednesday night that are going to draw people that have the biggest star. Right now, the biggest star is I almost called him Dean Ambrose. I don't know where that came from. Is Jon Moxley. Wow, Dean Ambrose. I haven't said that one in a while. Surf Wrestling says, Konosuke is very talented. I'm sure. I am not familiar. I am not going to lie. I am not familiar with his work, but I will check him out. Oh, he's from DDT? Okay, I just Googled it. I will check him out, though. I will check him out. Surf Wrestling also says, Lance Archer fits Impact Wrestling better. Really? I understand that. Another guy, W. Morrissey, by the way, who I think AEW should think about signing at some point. MGT asks, Omer, what about MJF? Interesting you asked that. So, if they weren't doing this storyline right now with MJF potentially leaving the company, I would have done it. But right now, I think that the money in having MJF do this storyline where he's trying to get fired by Tony Khan, where he's angry, I think that there's so much money in this storyline that it can be separate. It can be separate from a world title. MJF right now, what he's doing with this storyline is great. Let him keep doing this, because it's going to be a separate thing that can exist outside of the world title picture, because it doesn't need the world title picture. It's arguably bigger and better than anything they can do with the world title right now. But so and I don't think mixing the two right now is the right decision. That doesn't mean when Punk comes back and eventually wins, that doesn't mean you can't do this. That doesn't mean that you can't have Punk be defeated on his first ever defense by MJF. Maybe MJF by that time is the interim champion. Because remember, the interim title can be defended. It's very well possible that when Moxley wins the title at Forbidden Door, somebody else beats him before Punk returns. That is very well possible. And it's possible that it could be a guy like MJF. I think another person who is in that same category is a guy like Eddie Kingston. Do not doubt now, especially with Punk's injury, don't doubt them putting the interim world title on Eddie Kingston. The pop it would get, the moment that it would be to have Eddie Kingston, the most beloved pro wrestler out there right now. The fans love it. Who else could take the Eddie chance from Eddie Guerrero and have it be worth it? Like who else is worthy of that? It's Eddie Kingston, because of his story. He connects with the fans. The fans love him. He's been through it all. He's fought all his demons, and he's came out on top. And he's come out the other side. And he's doing the best work of his career. He's doing some of the best work that anyone's doing in pro wrestling right now. And that is a very rare thing to have. Even if the world title reign lasts like a week, the moment of Eddie Kingston winning that title is going to mean more than, honestly, some people's entire reigns. Like that moment is going to mean so much more. But Eddie Kingston's a guy who can do it. The one thing I'll say about this interim title is I really do hope that they end up counting these title reigns towards actual world titles and not just having them be whatever. I really think that they should count as actual world title reigns, because what are they doing? They're competing for the world's championship. They're competing for the world championship. So if those title reigns somehow are less than, because Punk isn't healthy enough to wrestle, and they decided to go with an interim championship, I don't think that makes sense. If you're wrestling for the world championship and you win, you deserve to be called world champion, and you deserve to have your name in those reigns. If Moxley wins at Forbidden Door, he should be a two-time AEW world champion. Men's world champion, I should say. Surf Wrestling in the chat asks, if someone privately fired your wife from a company, would you make wait, what? Would that make you come back neither? Whoa, what's going? Wait. I totally missed something here. I'm going to go back up into the chat. Surf Wrestling says, Omer, do you think Wyndham is secretly signed with AEW? I don't think so. Even if the intent is for Wyndham to eventually go to AEW or even to sign, I don't think Wyndham is going to sign until like right before he debuts, because that seems to be the thing. Tony Khan seems to trust talent enough to have them just show up and sign a contract. He did that with Punk. That happened with Bryan. He signed on the day of All Out. Punk signed the day of the first dance. So, I mean, they're obviously going to come to an agreement beforehand, but the contract's probably not going to be finalized until pretty soon into them showing up. Surf Wrestling also said June 11th, New Jersey. He better be at his meet and greet with his brother and father, Mike Rotunda. I mean, I don't see Wyndham missing a meet and greet. MGT says, I don't think Wyndham is going to end up in AEW. I mean, I understand there's a lot of people out there who don't believe that Wyndham's character fits AEW, like The Fiend fits AEW. I mean, I disagree. I think pro wrestling's pro wrestling. Pro wrestling is pro wrestling, and you can do whatever, man, as long as it's entertaining and it makes sense. It makes sense. Surf Wrestling in the chat says, if someone privately fired your wife from a company, would you make them out? I still don't know what you're referring to here. Surf Wrestling also says, only wrestling company that's been teasing Bray Wyatt is AEW since last year. I don't have they been teasing Bray Wyatt? Or even, like I don't know if they've been teasing it. Bray Wyatt's been teasing that he's coming back to wrestling. I don't know if he's been teasing Bray Wyatt. MGT says the name Wyatt is owned by WWE. Actually, so that's interesting. The name Bray Wyatt is owned by WWE. Wyndham can use a variation of Wyatt. So I understand he changed his Twitter handle to Wyatt6. Wyndham can come in with the name Wyatt6. He can come in with the name Bray Wyndham. He can come in with the name Wyndham Wyatt. He can come in with the name Wyndham Rotunda Wyatt, whatever he wants. He can do that. I mean, there's a few things that I'm sure he can't do. Like, you can't do the Wyatt family. You can't do the Eater of Worlds. You obviously can't call him the Fiend. But he can call himself Wyatt, and he can call himself Bray. He just can't call himself Bray Wyatt together, because that is an intellectual property owned by WWE, if that makes sense. Like these property things are very, very weird in the way they work. By the way, for those wondering, no, WWE do not own the Yes chants. You cannot own those chants. Like that is, you can't. And if they can, actually no, they can't. There's no way that's true. So Wrestling says, you got to look through the facts. His Wyndham 6 and with the Fiend scratch off his new creation away from WWE. Surf Wrestling says he can come in as just Malachi. Oh my God! Imagine that, Malachi Black and Malachi Wyatt fighting over who is the real Malachi. Would the real Malachi please stand up? Please stand up. Please stand up. I mean, that's an interesting thing. That totally can happen as well, but I don't expect AEW to do that. I think Wyndham 6 or Wyndham Wyatt, Wyndham Rotunda, obviously. He can go by Bray, he can go by Wyatt, whatever he wants, but I don't know. At the end of the day, we're going to have to see. The only time when we will know when Bray is ready, when Wyndham, whatever you want to call him, is ready, when Wyndham finally shows up in the place. Whether it's AEW, whether it's back in WWE, whether it's Ring of Honor, whether it's... sorry, not Ring of Honor, because that's basically AEW, but whether it's Impact Wrestling, you know what I'm saying. Surf Wrestling says, Diablo Wyatt sounds fitting. Hey, man, if you're going to do a tour down in AAA, might as well. Diablo Wyatt. Be over like we're over down there in AAA. But yeah. So there's that. But I mean, the whole Wyatt thing is very interesting because he's proven that you can not wrestle, not even do like that many public appearances, and still be relevant in pro wrestling. Like, he has managed to keep himself relevant. He's managed to talk just enough to keep people speculating, keep his price high, keep his name out there. It's a very smart strategy and the very smart way that Wyndham has gone about doing this. And you got to commend that. On top of all the other stuff that he's doing stuff with movies. He's consulting for horror movies. He's obviously a very smart individual. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's calculated. He's methodical. So don't be surprised. I mean, look, I understand the reason people say he might not show up in All Elite Wrestling is because AEW is more of a sports-oriented show. But at the same time, they have Abaddon. They have a guy who thinks he's a dinosaur. They have a wrestler who thought she was an alien or was an alien. Like, they have the gimmick of the lights going on and coming off and all that stuff. There's a lot of gimmicky stuff. But, and that's what pro wrestling is. As long as it's fun and makes sense, I'm fine with it. I don't care. Here's the thing. The reason why I hated the Lily doll thing wasn't because it was like, supernatural bollocks. It wasn't because it was supernatural stuff. It was because it was supernatural crap. It just wasn't good. It just wasn't good writing. It just wasn't good TV. Made me want to turn my TV off, switch the channel. So, like, that's the difference. You can have... The Fiend proved that in a pro wrestling setting, you can 100% make that gimmick work. The Hardy stuff... No, they did the Hardy stuff in AEW, and it worked. You're telling me Damascus can't rise in from the ice in AEW? You're telling me they can do like come on. They did those cinematic matches. They've done Stadium Stampedes. They've done the Darby Allin cinematic match. Like, it's like, come on. Like, at the end of the day, if it's good, people won't care. If it's good and it makes sense, nobody will care whether it's real enough. You'll have the 5 people on the internet who complain about everything. They're going to complain no matter what. But as long as it's good, people are watching, people are interested, people are glued to the TV, it won't matter. Put out good stuff and the people will come. Surf Wrestling says they got the House of Black. Yes, they do. Imagine if Julia Hart and Lily Doll in AEW, it wouldn't make sense. Like, yeah. If Julia Hart had a Lily Doll, you would see me turn on the entire House of Black thing very quickly because that would mean it would be complete crap. However, there is a world where they do it as a troll and do it. The Lily Doll thing, I'm sure there's a universe where it could have worked. I just don't see it. I think it's I don't know. We'll see. Surf Wrestling also says, but if you twisted Real Psycho, Real Like, it would have hit like you do it. Do I have a gimmick for the Lily Doll that's going to get it over and make it entertaining? Not really off the top of my head. I have a bunch of gimmicks for Alexa Bliss that would be really over. I have a bunch of gimmicks for Julia Hart that would get her really over. This being one of them, what she's doing right now with the House of Black. But a doll? Not a priority. MGT in the chat says, where will Wyndham fit in AEW? Wherever the hell he wants. Wherever the hell he wants. Because he's Wyndham Wyatt. MGT says the Lily Doll sells. Well, that's the thing. The Lily Doll wasn't on TV because it would make for good television. The Lily Doll was on TV so WWE could sell merch. Which, by the way, it's like the smartest merch thing that WWE's done in a while. Because remember when Nikki Ash won the women's title, they had no merch for her. And her entire gimmick was a merch type gimmick. You could have had Nikki Ash action figures. You could have Nikki Ash capes. You could have Nikki Ash anything. They'd had nothing for Nikki Ash when she won the title. And then by the time she lost, they had, I think, the lost title, they had, like, I think just that day or that week put up stuff online on WWEshop.com. So, I mean, like, again, yeah, fine. If it's for the good of the company and going to make people money, that's fine. But, like, at least have it make sense and be universal about it. Surf Wrestling says, I think the Lily doll was inspired by Decay in Impact Wrestling. Very well could have been. Very well could have been. Guys, remember to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new videos are released. I'm trying to keep the show to about an hour is what we're trying to do here. I'm trying to have a Wrestling with Omer be about an hour show. Again, interacting with you guys, interactive enough to get your ideas heard, talk a little wrestling, talk about what's on my mind, and rant, honestly, but also don't talk enough to ruin my voice. So I think we got about 20. We got like a little less than 20 minutes left in today's show. I just want to thank you all for joining MGT, Surf Wrestling. Before I forget, I want to thank you both for joining. We got a little bit left, though, to talk about. And again, I think the bigger issue of the injury bugs it's the bigger issue of the injuries. Like people want to ask, like, what can be done to help mitigate this? There's really not much that can be done, to be honest with you. It's just part of the business. Injuries happen in contact sports, in contact in contact things like these. These are professional. These are professional stuntmen throwing themselves at the ground. So you're gonna get injured sometimes. It's just part of the deal. You know it going in. MGT says, does AEW need Wyndham though? Great question. That is actually a very fair and great question. I am of the opinion that AEW needs people that draw ratings. AEW just needs people that are going to draw ratings and make money. One of the guys who drew a lot of ratings, a lot of buzz, a lot of interest was Wyndham Rotunda when he was doing the Fiend stuff especially, and back when he was doing the original Wyatt family character. If there's a guy out there that you want to get that's going to be more than a hand, that's going to be featured on TV week to week and have a segment, it's Bray Wyatt. I'm sorry. He just has too much of a buzz surrounding him. So, where does he fit into the mix of things? That's Tony Khan's job to figure it out. I am not Tony Khan. I am just a random speculator on YouTube. A really good speculator, by the way. Tony Khan has stolen a bunch of my ideas. By the way, this is just my high horse. I'm getting on. Tony Khan, you stole my idea for Rampage. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care if he says, if Tony Khan's going to be like, I was writing Rampage back in 1997 or whatever. No. I was writing Rampage back in 2009, 2008, 2009 for OBW, Our Backyard Wrestling. That was my show. Friday Night Rampage, by that was I have the work. I'm going to upload this to Twitter. I am like, look, obviously Tony Khan got to it before I did as far as making it a real show. However, as you know, he didn't. I filmed Rampage. I need to find those. I need to find the Backyard Wrestling tapes because I filmed like at least 3 or 4 episodes of Friday Night Rampage, OBW Friday Night Rampage, back in 2009, 2010, somewhere back then. We were this was a real thing. I was a booker. I made myself world champion, announcer. I was the announcer. I was the booker. I was the on-screen authority figure. And at one point, I won the world title because I am a mark for myself. But I mean, no, but Tony Khan did steal my idea for Rampage, and I will live and die by that. Yeah, if I ever go to a media scrum, I'm going to mention that. I'm just going to be like, hey, Tony, by the way, I was writing Rampage back in 2010. And he's probably going to be like, well, great, I was writing Rampage back in like 1997. But big shout out to Tony Khan, though, for stealing my ideas. Also, I did predict correctly also, I love how Tony Khan actually does think about wrestling very similarly to I do. Because I remember last year's Blood and Guts, And again, I'm not taking credit for this. It's a work. I'm mostly joking here. But I remember last year going into Blood and Guts, Trevor and I on the original Real Take Wrestle Talk show were talking about what is the best way for this feud to end between the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle. And I was like, you do the 1996? I think it was 1996. 1996 finish for War Games, which saw which was the Four Horsemen versus the NWO. Yeah, it was the Four Horsemen versus the NWO, and in the end, basically the Four Horsemen were all except for Ric Flair were tied or handcuffed to the cage, and they were bashing Ric Flair's head in to the steel cage. And they said, you can make this stop. The NWO said, you can make this stop by quitting the match. And I think Benoit or someone else quit the match. And that's how they won. And that's kind of how that's basically how it ended with the Inner Circle versus the Pinnacle. So, I don't know. That was just a rant I went on. MGT says, AEW Dark is premiering now. Well, there you go. AEW Dark is premiering now. Maybe I should do this as a 7 p.m. preview, because I originally thought of this show as a preview into WWE Raw. Maybe I should do this as a preview into Dark. But looks like Dark already premiered though, unless I'm mistaken. Very well could be mistaken. Either way, y'all let me know in the chat. Hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Yeah, it already premiered 47 minutes ago. So, there we go. It already premiered when I was doing this. So, I guess I'm competing with Dark. Maybe I'm eating into my own audience. Monday night isn't a great night for this, but we'll see. But yeah. Tony Khan, what a guy. Not that I'm on his payroll, though. You know what's weird? People did say that to me back when we would talk about AEW before we started being a little more critical. By the way, there are reasons 100% to be critical of AEW. The booking of the women's division is not great. Really bad at a lot of points. There's a lot of storylines that do get dropped. That's not great. The perception of representation, I should say, is like that whole perception is not great. Tony Khan's tweets sometimes, a lot of times, are not great. So there are obviously problems. I think one thing's for sure, though, the honeymoon phase with AEW is over. The honeymoon phase where everyone was just loving this new entity, this new pro wrestling promotion that was legitimately solidifying itself as a real contender and a real thing, I think it's over. Like people are critical of AEW, and it's a good thing. We should be critical of AEW. We 100% should be critical of AEW. We got a chat by MGT who says, "What'd you think about Hell in a Cell overall?" I thought the opener and the main event were great. Like the opening match, so opening match, in my opinion, I actually liked more than the main event. Like I think Asuka, Bianca Belair, and Becky Lynch just went out there and tore the house down. They went out there with that mentality of let's just go out there and just steal the show with the first match, and that's exactly what they did. So again, not. I think the undercard matches were obviously very weak. I was not a fan. I know a lot of people are like Madcaps are getting really good, and not a fan of that. Not a fan with mostly anything with Bebo Corbo, but yeah, guys, we're heading down the home stretch here. We got a few minutes left here. I think I'm gonna go until 55, and then we're just gonna call it a day. But this has been fun. This has been a lot of fun. Again, overall, Hell in a Cell, I thought it was the fact that it was like limited to that 3-hour range was really good too. I will say that there was no 6-hour C-show pay-per-view vibe from from WWE. I'm not saying that about AEW. AEW only has like 4 pay-per-views a year, or 5, I guess, with Forbidden Door. But there used to be some back in the day in like 2017, 2018, when WWE would do those like 4-hour, 7 p.m. Pay-per-views. It was a lot. It just got to be way too much IMO, but thankfully we're past that. So is what it is, guys. Guys, remember to hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We got about 5 minutes left in the show. Get your chats in, get your questions in. Let me know what you guys think about all this. Last thought on the injury bug that has plagued pro wrestling. All the fans who are upset, all the fans who are screaming at the top of their lungs that there is something wrong, that it's a curse, that things are not going to be great moving forward. RELAX. Relax. It's going to be okay. AEW has a roster that they can get it. They have a lot of people to use. WWE have a lot of people to use. It's a matter of how they use them. It's a matter of how they use them. Next person up isn't just a saying. It's a mentality that you either live by or you don't. And higher ups at AEW, higher ups at WWE, you got to adapt or die. You got to adapt or die. Right now, you find out what these companies are made out of. You find out how adaptable they are and how willing they are to put on the best show possible for the paying customers. We're going to find out exactly what they're made of over the next few weeks. MGT says, Madcap looked good, though, in his match. I'm sure he did. I didn't watch it. I'm not going to sit around here and pretend that I watched Madcap watch his match last night. I turned on the finals. Like I had the finals and Hell in a Cell on at the same time. I was peeking in and out of both. When Madcap Moss and when Baron Corbin comes on my TV, I turn the channel. I loved Baron Corbin, but I'm just not my cup of tea. It's just not my cup of tea. Is Bebo Corbo, but we'll see, guys. Wow, I just got some interesting news. But guys, we're sitting here, we're still talking. I'm still talking. I know I look like I was gonna end this. Might as well get my outros out of the way, and I'll answer last few chats here. Last few chats. We got 2 minutes left in the show, guys. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to head on over to youtube.com/Real Take Sports to subscribe for all your sports, NFL, NBA, MLB, and much more content. Also, be sure to subscribe here on youtube.com/Real Take Wrestling. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, be sure to hit that follow button and leave a 5-star on some RVD shit review. And as always, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Real Take Sports Talk. Follow us on Twitter at Real Take Sports. www.realtakesports.com. Patreon.com/Real Take Sports to show your support. And also, you can head on over to streamlabs.com/Real Take Sports 1 to leave a donation that is going to be very, very much appreciated in the long term. There's my outro. Also, guys, remember to enjoy some wrestling. There's a lot of great wrestling. We also got OT Graps this week. OT Graps Tuesday night right here at youtube.com/Real Take Wrestling. Me and Trevor are going to be talking about the biggest news in this week of professional wrestling. And yeah, hopefully we're going to do another one of these Wrestling with Omers next week. I'll try for next Monday night, 7 p.m., same time, same place. MGT in the chat says, Corbin got good heel heat in the match, and I think the guy is underrated. I think Corbin is actually really good. I just don't like the way he's presented on TV a lot of times. It's just very annoying, and that's fine. I will watch. MGT for you. I will watch his match with Madcap Moss, and I will report back on tomorrow night, live, right here, 7 p.m., same place, same time, knuckleheads, for on OT Graps. I will respond and give you my honest opinion about that match because I feel like you deserve it. But, guys, it's been fun. Again, be sure to hit up all those plugs that I mentioned. be sure to check out some good wrestling. Let me know what great wrestling you guys are interested in, what great wrestling you guys are watching nowadays. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell, as I said. And as always, be happy, be healthy, and keep it.
Got enough love in myself, in my psyche. You should have the same in your brain nightly. If you wanna taste, bitch, you can fucking try me. If you wanna hate, bitch, you know where to find me. And if you go and hate this, you can fucking bite me. I'll be cruising in my lane fast, call it high speed. I've been working hard, yeah, I've been working nightly. If you think you'll win, not fucking likely. I be taking shots, yeah, cold-blooded, icy. Watching numbers grow is what I call sightseeing. In the front row, run it up when they hype me. The following grows, they know how to ignite me. Call me CEO, I've been running shit right, see. And I ain't playing games, I create my own lane, making pleasure out of pain, turning losses into gains. I'm the boss, I'm making change. I've been rocking this exchange, popping off and risking things. Gonna make a fucking name, I just wanna be famous. But I don't want that cheap fame, no I'm not that vain. I just wanna be greatness. I just wanna be greatness.